Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for having me in this morning. This morning, like Tony said, I just want to share a little information with you about what we're doing in the city of Sioux Falls. And you may have heard about the complaints that have been coming in recently, and we're going to talk about that a little bit this morning. As many of us know, the populations of humans in Minnehaha County, especially Sioux Falls and the surrounding small towns, has been increasing over the last 25 years. And in Minnehaha County alone, it's actually increased by about 55,000 people in the last 24 years, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And it's not Minnehaha County alone. Its neighbor to the south, Lincoln County, has also experienced a high number of human population growth, where it's increased over 34,000 people during the last 24 years. So in combination, those two areas surrounding Sioux Falls have increased about 90,000 people in the last 24 years. So that's not surprising that we're starting to get more complaints about wildlife and deer, especially in these areas in Sioux Falls and around Sioux Falls. And as we know, as people expand out into the deer habitat, we'll get more complaints, but also you kind of create these habitats for deer inside the city where you'll have wooded ravines with cattails and nice cover within these neighborhoods that are maintained because people like the natural look of the backyard then. But it also creates a great habitat for deer where they can come in and browse on all of the smorgasbord that has been planted there for them, all these landscape plants and ornamental trees and that kind of thing. So the two main areas that we're dealing with in Sioux Falls are the northern area, which is shown in yellow up on the top. And I'll discuss each one of these in more specific details as we go through the presentation. But that area up in the north, we have a lot of deer in that area, and it's just south of I-90 and north of Rice Street. And as I talked about the populations growing in Sioux Falls and neighboring communities, the populations in Brandon have also expanded quite quickly also. And the Rice Street corridor, there's a Rice Street which turns into a highway and runs over into Brandon, gets a lot of traffic, and it's also become one of the areas of highest deer vehicle mortality collision rates in the state. The other area that we've just started getting complaints on in the last few years, and it came to a head here this last year, is the new complaint area, and it's south in the southeast part of the city, south of I-229 and pretty much north of 69th Street. So the Sioux Falls archery hunt was established in 2010, and the goal there was to reduce the deer herd in that area and try to reduce those car deer accidents which were occurring on Rice Street and I-229. There are some agriculture areas in that zone, so we wanted to help reduce some depredation complaints that were occurring, and then also try and minimize the disease transmission between animals. This is one of the fields in the archery hunt area. It's actually set up right near the disabled hunter zone, and you typically do see herds of 30 to 60 deer in this field. As I said, the Sioux Falls archery hunt was established in 2010. It was one of the first citywide city archery hunts in South Dakota. On average, there's about 15 to 20 deer which are removed per year, and we focus on removing does from the population. The area up in the northeast part of the city is very conducive to hunting. There's a low human population, and it's easy to coordinate through the Sioux Falls GFP in cooperation with the city of Sioux Falls. But also it's highly dependent upon the generosity of the Sweetman family. And as you're looking at your maps that Emmett handed out, Most of the hunting zones that are shown in green in this area that area is all owned by the Sweetman family, and they allow hunters to go in there every year and help reduce the deer population out there. So this hunt is really very dependent upon their generosity. In total, this whole hunting area that we allow hunters to go in is less than 1 square mile, which is a pretty small area, but we do have quite a few deer up in that area. There's a lot of deer over here in the Great Bear area also, and so you get a lot of travel across Rice Street in different areas where those deer are crossing. So it would be nice if at some point in the future we could try and increase the hunting opportunity up in that area. So each of those green circles on the map is a hunting zone, and one hunter is assigned that zone for 3 weeks. So he has a 3-week time period to go out there, and then we have 5 3-week time periods. So this year we added 2 areas up in the northern part of this unit, north of the water treatment plant. So in total we had 65 hunters, which will be out trying to reduce the deer population up in that northern part of the city. This is just a picture of one of the new zones that we added in the northern part. And we know that there's a lot of archery hunters in Minnehaha County, and what's nice about this is that we can reduce the deer population while also adding hunter opportunity, because we have a lot of archery hunters that are coming out of Minnehaha County, and this offers them an opportunity to hunt close to home. So the second deer management area that we are going to be talking about today is the new complaint area, which is south of I-229. We've had an increasing number of deer complaints coming out of this area. We get some, and then the city of Sioux Falls also gets probably the brunt of the complaints through their animal control division. Landowners are complaining about the damage to their property, the landscaping plants, damage to ornamental trees, also the large volume of deer droppings that are being deposited in their backyards and on soccer fields, that sort of thing. But there's also been a lot of deer vehicle collisions along I-229 there, and then also on the streets that are the main streets in Sioux Falls, like South Minnesota Avenue, Southeastern, and Cliff. So in total last year, the city compiled the numbers for the number of deer vehicle collisions in Sioux Falls, and they found that there was about $200,000 in vehicle damage just due to deer in that area. We've also had complaints about people feeding deer in town, and in some of these instances people would bring in hay bales or actual feeding troughs where they would be feeding corn to the deer in the middle of town. The city officials back in April and started to put together a plan of action for what we need to do. We discussed the problem with them and some of the solutions that they could work towards. And so the city has been working on a deer management plan since that time. There's a few different components of the plan that we wanted them to include. The first was to put together all their complaint data, summarize the complaints in some general, they'd been coming into different departments and that sort of thing. So to make that a more fluid process where all the complaints are going into one area and they're able to compile them a little bit better. We also wanted them to compile the deer vehicle collision data, which I showed earlier on the screen, and that turned out to be about $200,000 last year. We encouraged them to bring the public in and get their opinions on what they wanted to do with deer. If they, was it just a vocal few that were coming in and complaining or calling in, or was the problem more widespread? And so they sent out a public survey, which I'll discuss the results of, and then we held 2 open houses where they could come in and let us know what their thoughts were, fill out the surveys, and get more information. We also encouraged them to pass a wildlife feeding ordinance, which doesn't affect feeding birds, but it does affect feeding deer. And that was actually passed, and will go into effect around December 1st. And then we encourage them also to get an idea of what the deer population actually is in those areas. And so they have been doing deer surveys, which were set up according to us as far as methodology and time of year and techniques. They did their first survey in May just to kind of see what was out there. And then they also did surveys in September and October, similar to what we do with the fall classification survey. This wasn't really a scientific study as we would do with the game and fish. They don't have the staff to put together a survey like that. But they did mail out postcards to each of the homes in that affected area, asking them to go online and submit a survey. But the survey was open online to everybody that was in town. So anybody that lived in Sioux Falls could complete that survey online or drop off a survey at a library. So the results that we have, I'm not sure, the city is compiling them. They actually asked on the survey, where do you live, or what's the closest intersection to where you live? So they're going to plot all of the survey responses on a map and hopefully determine where all the majority of the complaints are coming in from. At this point, they don't have that done yet. So they had 956 responses, and the survey period was open for 36 days. And 95% of the people that filled out the survey actually lived in Sioux Falls, so that's a good sample. So these are some of the results from the survey. The first question was, do you have deer on your property in Sioux Falls? And 62% of the people said, yes, we have deer on our property. And if they said yes to that, then we had them go on and complete some other questions. The first was, how many deer do you normally see per month on your property in Sioux Falls? The majority of them only had 1 to 5. And what we've been hearing from landowners is, we don't mind 1 or 2 or 3, even up to 5, but once it gets more than that, then it gets to be too much. So we asked them also, when do you see more deer on your property, in the summer or in the winter? As expected, it was higher in the winter. That's when the deer herd up more. And we do know that some deer are moving into the city during the winter. We had a radio-collared fawn from north of T that moved with her mother into the city and lived at just on South Minnesota and 57th Street in that area over the winter. So we know that there is some movement coming in. We just don't know how much that is. They also asked them, over the last 5 years, do you think there's more deer or less deer in your neighborhood? The majority of people said that the deer have increased either slightly or increased a lot. And then we wanted to know what they perceive to be the extent of the property on damage to the property on their land. And 53% of those people thought that there was some sort of damage, minimal to severe. And then the last question they asked, they really wanted to get a handle on whether people would support any kind of lethal removal of deer in that area. And so they wanted to ask that question, and it turns out that about 58% do support in some way the removal of deer. Even though many of them don't have deer on their property, it seems like they are willing and understanding of the problem and maybe favoring something like this in the future. So the next steps are to review the deer management plan that's coming from the city. The city should have that to our office this week or next week. And then at that time, we'll review it, see if it needs to be edited at all or changed. And then we'll sit down with them and decide whether a kill permit is actually an option or not. But after that, we'll continue to work with the city of Sioux Falls to keep updating the management plan, helping them to do their deer surveys, and then implementing this archery hunt in the northern part of the city. This is actually one of the yards in Sioux Falls that somebody's been complaining about. They have They're lucky they have deer and turkeys in their yard. Are there any questions?
Questions for Julie? Got your work cut out for you to keep all that under. Thank you very much, Julie. Nicely
Thank
done.
you.
Thanks for being with us today.